Okay, welcome to the Baton Rouge Press Club. This week we have a forum of the candidates from State Senate District 16. But before we get to that, I'll tell you next week is Labor Day, so we are not meeting for Labor Day. But the following week, September 9th, we're going to have a forum with the candidates for Agriculture Commissioner. So that'll be our next one. So we have 5 candidates in this race, and I'm going to endeavor to say names correctly. So first, and we're going to go alphabetically from left to right over here, we have Everett Baton. Okay, he's a Libertarian. We have Bob Bell, who is a Republican. We have Steve Carter, a Republican. Franklin Foyle, also a Republican. And Beverly Brooks Thompson, who is a Democrat. So the format is going to be, we're going to have 2-minute openings, and we're just going to go alphabetically. And then we'll get to questions. We'll have 1-minute answers from each candidate to each question. And then we'll have 1-minute closings. I'm going to attempt to rotate alphabetically. We'll see if I do as well as this as I would intend to. Only press club members and working media are allowed to ask questions. Please raise hands and I'll select people to ask their questions, and you'll need to state your name and your affiliation. And candidates, when you are answering and giving your statements, can you please come to the microphone so that everybody can hear you and so that the TV cameras can get you. Okay, so, and we have a lovely timekeeper here who will cut you off when needed. So, if we start with our 2-minute openings, Mr. Baton.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Everett Baton. I'm the Libertarian Party candidate for State Senate District 16. All right, got some fans in the audience. The Libertarian Party is the 3rd largest and fastest growing political party in the United States, and we are representing a way out from the Republican-Democrat duopoly that so dominates our politics, providing a 3rd option for everyone. In the state of Louisiana, we've got some specific focuses that we would like to address in this election. Principally, we don't believe that the government should be in the business of choosing winners and losers, and that goes for politics and for economics. Politically speaking, we support an end to partisan gerrymandering, which has caused a lot of gridlock in our state. Secondly, we don't support government action that favors any person over another person. For example, the industrial tax exemption program, which has been in the news a lot lately, we don't believe that any particular industry should be getting special treatment economically by the state. So, the last thing I would like to address in my limited opening statement is criminal justice reform. The Libertarian Party has long supported an end to the war on drugs, or as we like to call it, the war on people who use drugs. And I think if we were to do this with the momentum for criminal justice reform that we currently have in the state, that would be the most important thing we could do for the state of Louisiana at this time. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you for inviting me. Can everyone hear me back in the back there? First of all, I want to say that state government is in a big mess. The focus of my campaign is to bring badly needed business sense to state government. We can go from fiscal cliffs to economic lifts if we just follow a logical program that I have set forth. First, you reduce regulations, take the burden and the aggravation off of people and off of businesses, get the economy moving through cutback in regulations. This doesn't cost any tax increase or tax reduction or benefit cuts or benefit increases. You simply go to the heart of the matter in the first step and let the economy get moving. Then when you start generating a surplus because you have more taxpayers, then that's when you can cut taxes later down the road. And benefits will cut themselves as people transfer to jobs instead of more benefits. So I just want to point out that Louisiana has lost people, and these people are taxpayers who help fund state government. And yet we've been in last place for many decades now, it seems. We have all the resources we need to move forward. We've lost 2 members of Congress since before the 2000 census, and we'll we'll lose some more too. So I'll mention that in my closing. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank the Press Club for inviting us to come to this debate. My name is Steve Carter. I've been a state representative for 12 years, and I love what I do. I enjoy working with people. I enjoy trying to problem solve, and the main thing that I would like to continue to attempt to try to do is one of my passions, as most of y'all know, is early childhood. It's really kids. I'm for attempting to try to ensure that every youngster has an opportunity to get a great education. That's the reason why I've had a great life, is I've had a great education. It's a shame when someone is, say, 1-year-old or 2-year-old and can't afford to go to a daycare center. They start school and they're behind, therefore they don't enjoy going to school. So early childhood is still my passion. I know this past session we had some trouble that we got on the Education Committee blamed that we were not for a teacher pay raise. That's not the case. The people on the House Education Committee were bold enough to send the information back to Bessie simply because they were trying to use the $3.9 million for the districts. I'm all for that, but we were all for early childhood. And fortunately, we made some inroads. We got people to recognize the fact that early childhood is really important. And so the governor was kind enough to, in the budget, give $20 million to early childhood. But we need $80 million. So I'm going to continue to fight for early childhood, continue to fight for infrastructure, and continue to attempt to try to do bold things that we need in this state because the status quo just will not work. So thank y'all very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Franklin Foyle. I'm currently in House District 70 here in Baton Rouge. I was raised in Baton Rouge and have lived here my whole life. I graduated from LSU and Loyola Law School. I married my wife, Tanya. We have 3 children. After law school, I joined the United States Navy, and I was a JAG officer on active duty for 4 years, and I've been in the reserves ever since. Now I'm in 28 years, and I'm an appellate judge in Washington, D.C. When the seat came open in the House in 2007, that was the first year term limits took effect, and I decided I would try to put my name in the hat and run for that office. And with my leadership that I had attained from the Navy, as well as my experience as an attorney and a family support, we were fortunate to win. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the time I've been able to serve in the House. One of my passions has been working for people with disabilities. We've made a lot of progress in that respect. And I offer to the voters someone who has a lot of experience, someone who's been effective, who's been able to work with both Governor Jindal and Governor Edwards in passing 73 bills into law since I was elected, and I will continue those efforts. I've also served on the Appropriations Committee for the last 8 years, the last 4 years as Vice Chairman, and we've tried to do a lot of things on the House side to make things better with the budgeting, and I want to go over and help on the Senate side to get it done. So thank you for your time, and look forward to being with you today.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Beverly Brooks Thompson, and I am thrilled to be here. It's so nice to see so many friends in the press today. I want to introduce myself in this forum. I am not a well-known face in politics, although I've been in the political arena for over 25 years through my community and public service. I know many of you as the former director of the Forever LSU campaign and through my work as the president of the Foundation for Women's at Women's Hospital. And my 25 years of public service, I'm new to the political stage, and I'm very grateful for you having me here today. I don't necessarily represent a special interest or a special party here. I would like to say I represent the people, and the people that I've worked very hard for the past 25 years. I've lived in District 16 for almost 30 years, and frankly, I'm running to bring accountability and fiscal responsibility back to the legislature. This is not a special interest to me. This is real work. I'll tell you, I never saw myself running for public office, but as I was raising with our team $798 million at LSU, I will tell you I was very disheartened when our legislature, including 2 of my opponents, were cutting higher education by $1 billion. And I find it challenging that you can call yourself a champion of education and cut our flagship institution to the degree. I also was the president of Women's Hospital when Medicaid expansion was not being rolled out. So to take care of kids and our most vulnerable populations here in this state, I'm thrilled that with the governor's help, we've now been able to roll that out. I'm running for accountability and responsibility, and if nothing else, I'm going to hold our leaders accountable. You can say all day that this legislature, that one has carried the water. I've seen a lot of picked up buckets, but I haven't seen those water go over the line. Again, I'm Beverly Thompson, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Okay, and now we will open it to questions. The question is where each candidate stands on the St. George movement, and we will start with Mr. Bell.
I think it's a basic right to be able to form your own municipality. Central was allowed to do this. It's perfectly legal. Don't see why the people in St. George can't do it if they choose to vote for it, the same as it happened in Central. Now, when I was assigned to the Navy in South Florida, I worked to create, village government there, and it was the same thing. You know, people said this shouldn't happen, but the people in the area voted for it, and it came to pass. So I think it's a good thing if the people vote for it.
That's a very good question. I do not live in the district, so it's up to the voters now to determine what's going on and how they want to, whether or not they want to separate from the city. Legislatively, we tried to do some things to assist and help. It passed, some of it did, and the governor vetoed it. So there's nothing we can do right now about it. Only thing we can do is wait, sit back, see how the vote is. Then whatever happens, we need to continue to try to work together to solve the problem.
I live in the city limits of Baton Rouge, so I will not be voting on that issue. My position is that we have laws in place on how people in unincorporated areas can petition to become incorporated. As long as the people follow that law, I think they should have the right to vote, and it's a democratic process, and let them decide what they want to do moving forward.
I do live in District 16, although I do not live in St. George. And like others up here, I do believe in a people's right to assemble, and I do believe in putting things on the ballot that affect people. But I will hold you accountable, and I will be courageous and say we are better together. In every situation and in every way, we have proven it time after time. So if I were given the opportunity to vote, I would vote against it.
Well, I also do not live in the St. George area, so it doesn't affect me personally. That being said, I will agree with many other people here today that people should have the right to choose their own destiny and their own government as much as possible. And I, as well as many other libertarians, generally favor more of an emphasis on bottom-up local control over people's lives as opposed to top-down state or federal control. So generally, yes, I would support the right of the people in the St. George area to form their own local government.
Lanny is asking about the Lance Harris bill that would have phased out the the 0.45% state sales tax earlier than the current plan. And he wants to know if the candidates supported that bill if they were in the House, and if they would support that bill if it comes back up. Correct? We'll start with Representative Carter.
Thank you, Lanny, for the question. I did vote for Lance's bill. I thought it was the right thing to do simply because we have been taxed enough and we had a surplus, and so consequently I did vote for it. Would I vote for it in the future? That would depend, Lanny. It depends upon any reforms that we do. As you know, with the infrastructure tax that I proposed last year, we had an awful lot of reform in there for DOTD, and DOTD needs to be reformed. I also feel like that we need to either have a constitutional convention or we need to have some legislation to reform our tax codes and what have you. So if in the event that those are tied to the tax, and we do assure that we improve the quality of life of citizens, and we need the tax, that I would see what's going on, and I would probably vote for it if it was necessary. Otherwise, if without reform, I'm not going to vote for anything.
For the phase out of the sales tax, it was a 7-year time period that we put the sales tax in for. I did vote for that bill to roll it back. I think that's responsible over time. We did have a $300 million surplus this past year, and so if we are having surpluses, then I think we need to make the adjustments and send the money back to the people. once again, I am all for fiscal reform. In 2008, my first year in the legislature, I pushed for a commission to study whether or not we should have a constitutional convention. And I passed that same resolution again out of the House this year, but it got stalled in the Senate. If we're going to have real fiscal reform, you're going to have to open up the Constitution and put everything on the table. And I have brought that almost every year that I've been in office, and will continue to fight that.
Well, seeing that I have not been in the legislature, I'll let the record speak for itself of who votes for taxes and who doesn't vote for taxes. But like Franklin, I do agree that we need a constitutional convention. I'm an academic, I have 4 degrees, and I like to study all day long, but I think the time for studying a constitutional convention is over. We need people in the legislature who are going to act on issues that affect everyday taxes. But to answer your question, no, I won't support new taxes unless they are holistically dedicated to the projects that are funded.
Well, anyone who has any familiarity with what the Libertarian Party stands for knows that we are no fans of taxes. We absolutely deplore taxes. That being said, we also hate deficits. So as much as the Libertarians, myself included, do not support new taxes, I also would not support cutting taxes if we don't also drastically cut spending, shrinking the size of government. If we can get the government down to where it doesn't need the money, then we should absolutely cut the taxes. But I would agree that we need to do drastic cuts to the state government first, and then we should consider reducing taxes.
Well, reducing taxes is one of the major elements of my plan, so I would not limit my efforts just to voting for that bill. It sounds like a good bill that I would vote for, but we need to do much more. We need to compete with other states, and as long as we have the highest sales tax in the country and other taxes that drive people away, we'll continue to lose people and taxpayers who could help us out without raising taxes. Thank you.
Question is, what is the biggest priority for you for the incoming class of legislators? And we start with Representative Foyle.
By far, to get the fiscal situation under control, and that's why you have people now actually supporting the Constitutional Convention from all spectrums, because people are tired of the ups and downs and the instability of the budget. There are also other budget reforms we can do, such as only spending 98% of the money that's projected to come in. Do more enforcement of Medicaid recipients by giving the auditor more tools to look at eligibility. Doing zero-based budgeting. Those are things we have tried in the House side and the Appropriations Committee, and they have not gotten through the Senate. But I think the public wants fiscal stability, and they want the necessary services to be provided.
I think the #1 priority has to be a constitutional convention so that we can take care of the fiscal disaster that we find ourselves in year after year. We are balancing the budget on the backs of our students every day and on the backs of our most vulnerable populations. That is unacceptable. There is no way to move forward without taking care of the fiscal issues facing our state.
I would agree that the fiscal problems we face are very significant. I would also say that one of the most important things we need to focus on is continuing to move toward more criminal justice reform. We did some great stuff recently. If I've got my statistics are still accurate, we went from being the #1 place for incarceration on earth to #2. So we have advanced a little bit. But that being said, we can debate all day long how important it is to provide services in early childhood education and things like that. But how important is it for us to worry about early childhood education while we are still putting the children's parents in prison?
I agree that we need a constitutional convention. We need to at least modify some of the existing parts of the Constitution to allow more flexibility to the legislature to manage finances realistically. But at the same time, we can't wait for a constitutional convention. On day 1 of the new legislative session in January of next year, we need to start right away getting the state economy moving, get it into a growth mode that will generate more revenue without making us non-competitive with other states.
Wow, what a question. Because when everything is good, we're dead last, and everything that's bad, we're #1. We got an awful lot of things we need to try to correct. I would say a constitutional convention, but the problem we have with a constitutional convention, we've been trying to work on this for I don't know how long, is it's very difficult to determine who the delegates are going to be, because the delegates want to be in there to continue to protect what they've got. So restructuring our entire tax code is very necessary, whether it's a constitutional convention or by legislation. North Carolina did it by legislation. We're very successful and have surpluses every year. But let's not forget about our infrastructure problems. We've got about a $15 billion backlog on infrastructure. We haven't done anything in 30 years. We need a new bridge. We're struggling with the new bridge. So there are an awful lot of things that we need to do, but the status quo isn't going to work. We need to find some way to move our state forward. I think we've got good people running for offices, and hopefully that'll happen.
The perfect question. What would your priority be in the Senate to improve traffic in Baton Rouge? And I believe this time we start with Dr. Thompson.
Well, I would like to applaud the governor and the mayor for coming together for the initiative that has moved Baton Rouge. I believe that we are only going to be as positive as our ability to work together. Clearly, we need a new bridge. There are a multitude of ways to get to the solution. That could be public-private partnerships. That, of course, could be a gas tax that Steve's put forward several times. There are a lot of different opportunities with that. But most importantly, we have to make sure that there is money available so that when the feds drop money down, we are able to capture that money. And the only way to do that is to work with our municipalities and our federal government officials to make that happen.
I do think it is important to discuss accountability when it comes to these issues. Everyone generally agrees that we need better roads and better traffic conditions in Baton Rouge. Meanwhile, the state is spending a great deal of money on things that a lot of us don't even like. For example, we need a new bridge. Everyone agrees on this. However, what we get is a library that is falling down. Why are we spending money on things we don't need and wasting money on doomed projects? And I see roads being worked on that aren't necessarily the roads that most need fixing. So I think we need more accountability in determining where the state dollars need to be spent, and not just to spend more dollars, because throwing more money at the problem hasn't really fixed anything in the state to date. Thank you.
Well, I think part of the problem is the fact we're not throwing money at the problem when it comes to roads and bridges. 89% of the state gas tax is not spent on roads and bridges. This has been going on for decades. So if you take the money that's supposed to go to roads and bridges and you spend it on something else for 30 years, it is a tremendous hole. So the first thing we got to do is get the state gas tax back for roads and bridges, and then you can bond it, and you can move on with what needs to be done. But you can't bond it if you're taking it and spending it on something else.
Will, great question. I'm going to answer it with one word: courage. Because we have attempted to try to pass a gasoline tax, but I consider it an infrastructure tax, because I think it's a savings tax for all of you in this room. Because you spend so much time and money waiting, standing in traffic, sitting in traffic, doing whatever it might be. Businesses will not come here simply because our roads are bad. So courage is what it's going to take. But the interesting thing about it is, we as legislators, we're not held in very high esteem. Example, the bridge is up there in St. Francisville. It should be here. So we've got to do a better job with all of you in here, making sure that they understand that what we're attempting to do and will do is in the best interest of all of our constituents, and ensure that we spend the dollars where they need to be spent. But courage is what it's going to take, I think, Will. We've got to make sure that people understand it and have the courage to do whatever is necessary. Thank you.
The top priority that I'm hearing is a new bridge. We need a new bridge south of town. There's no doubt about it. I've lived here my whole life. In Baton Rouge, the traffic has gotten worse and worse over time, and people really are looking for relief. So, you know, if we use a gas tax or state funding, that's part of the mix, and that needs to we need to make sure that money goes to a bridge. But even more importantly, I've tried to advocate that we come together and support some of these public-private partnership arrangements. The Baton Rouge Loop is an example. We fought on that, but that would have been a public-private partnership. The bump project, which I've pushed for in the past and continue to push for, where you take Airline Highway and put an expressway down the middle of Airline Highway and utilize the old bridge. You don't need a new bridge in that respect, because the bridge is already there and the old bridge is being underutilized. You need to make it more accessible for folks. So that we need a combination of private, public contributions to make this happen. They've done a great job in Texas if you've driven the roads in Houston and Dallas.
Okay, so the question is, where do you stand on tort reform, and specifically, would you support reducing the jury trial threshold to 0? Correct? And we start with Mr. Baton.
Generally, no, I don't support most tort reform efforts. I believe that courts are the best way to resolve disputes between people instead of creating a giant regulatory state to sort of try and stop these disputes before they happen. The facts are that Louisiana, while we do have a high rate of tort suits and a lot of stuff going on in that arena, we do also have an extremely high rate of car accidents. So our tort reform efforts, yes, there might be some important things there, but overall, people can't make claims unless wrecks are happening. So everyone needs to work on trying to drive a little bit better in the state of Louisiana, and then maybe we can talk about tort reform.
I think we should take a look at what other states are doing and set the threshold in a more uniform way, so it doesn't really make that much difference for insurance purposes if you're driving in Louisiana or Texas or some other state. But personally, I would think $2,500 would be a good threshold. You don't need all the minor things coming into the jury trial. But if you get to a certain point where you need a jury trial, that's part of our system of checks and balances. So I would say we can do a lot of things in the area of tort reform, but we have to be careful to respect the right to jury trial. Thank you.
I definitely think we need to ensure that we do a better job with our tort reform. I thought Kurt Talbert had an excellent bill. I thought it was going to lower our insurance premiums. I voted for it. When it got over in the Senate, of course, it got defeated. And that's why I think that we're going to have an opportunity with new people in the Senate to continue to not let the status quo work, that we're going to be able to make some bold changes and do some things that are necessary. But I definitely think that tort reform is needed, and I think that Kurt's bill, where it was a $5,000 threshold, is a good start.
The bill this session that reduced the jury threshold to $5,000, I don't think it should be reduced to zero because you don't want to have small claims matters in front of a jury. It's difficult as it is now to get jurors to come serve, and you don't want to clog up the court system. As a practicing attorney for almost 30 years, I've tried many jury trials. They're timely and expensive, and so you want to keep those, you want at least some threshold available. But I will tell you this, if you want to give checks and balances on the judges, then you give people options by lowering the jury threshold. There's no reason at $50,000 where we are now we should stay there as the highest in the country.
I do think that some type of reform is necessary. However, I think if you lower the thresholds, you better make sure that the backlogs in small towns and villages across this state have the ability to pay for the juries that are going to come before them. Having lived in a small community for a short period of time, I will tell you the backlog on our judiciary is serious. After we do a constitutional convention on fiscal reform, we should also look at the judiciary.
So the question is, what would be the number one thing that you would do to improve the lives of working men and women in the district and the state of Louisiana? Let me start with Mr. Bell.
There are a lot of small things that add up to something big in the lives of regular people like us. When you go to get your car inspected, you have to take time off from work to do that because the inspection stations close at 4:30 in the afternoon. So you're not only making people be aggravated and pay the fee for the inspection, but miss time from work. And there are a lot of people who don't get paid if they don't work. So that's an area, the Department of Motor Vehicles, they're tied in with the inspection stations. And so you need to change the schedule to accommodate the people, not to accommodate the government.
Keep saying that, but another good question. I think the first thing that we would need to do is probably to figure out a way, either through a constitutional convention or through tax reform, to try to allow us to free up dollars so we can do some things to continue to help people. And one of the things, obviously, that's high on my list is, if you go around the state, and a lot of us don't realize this, but there are an awful lot of bridges that are out right now, and we don't have the dollars to fix. And so consequently, the loggers and the farmers are having to go around, and it's time consuming, and it's not the right thing to do. So we've got to find some way somehow to generate enough dollars to accomplish the backlog of the infrastructure that we have in this state. And that would be probably with the Constitutional Convention or through tax reform to free up the dollars so we can help people would be the first thing I'd do.
There are a number of things that can be done, and I try with every bill I bring to do something that's going to help people. But in looking at the options, I think we need to do everything possible to make our community colleges available for all citizens and have plenty of opportunities for job training. You look at a state like Tennessee, you can go to community college for free. Here we do have the TOPS Tech program, but it's very underutilized. I was able to get started at Baton Rouge Community College, a program called Program for Successful Employment, PSE. And it's a job training program for people with intellectual disabilities where they do a year-long classroom training, then they place them out with an employer in an internship, and you have job coaches that go out there and do that. We need to do more of those things so everyone can have a good paying job and use the skills that they have.
The number one thing that I would do is knock on 15,000 doors to get elected. I want to represent people that look, walk, talk like me, working class people, the firefighter, the teacher, the nurse, the owner of a small business, folks like my husband who show up at a plant every day to get work done. I'll tell you, I'm not a career politician, and I'm not looking for the next big gig. I think we need real people in the legislature that have done real work in real businesses down there supporting the people. So we will continue to do the hard work. I, too, agree that internships and cooperative education and apprenticeships are necessary to educate our people. I was the internship and cooperative education coordinator for LSU, so I understand that very deeply. There are special things, place by place, organization by organization, we can affect, but we have to have people that understand where working people come from first.
I would agree in large part with Mr. Bell that a minor regulation is a major hassle for a lower socioeconomic status citizen. It's kind of a death by 1,000 cuts. You've constantly got little things that add up on you and make your life miserable. But at the risk of being repetitive here, I think, again, criminal justice reform, especially ending the drug war, which has been so disastrous, especially to people in low socioeconomic status, would do wonders to really help the working class. For example, if anyone who has in here today has not gone down to the courthouse on any given day, and look and see who's there, look and see who is there on criminal court matters, it's not the wealthy. Thank you.
Which candidate are you supporting for governor and why? And we'll start with Representative Carter.
Jim, that's why I go to vote and I pull the curtain. Obviously, as a Republican, I'm supporting a Republican governor. I think we've got two excellent candidates. And personally, because Eddie Risponi is from Baton Rouge, I would probably, and I'm not saying this categorically, that's what I'm going to do, but I think we need someone local to recognize our local problems that we can get to ensure that we can solve a lot of problems that we have here. So again, that's why I'll pull the curtain. We'll find out in September the 12th.
I'm not, at this point, publicly supporting anyone for governor. I'm totally concentrating on my race for Senate, and and they can run their own race. But I've learned before as a candidate that I try not to get involved in other people's races when I'm on the ballot as well. I'm totally focused on my race, and that's where I am at this point.
I'm proud to say that I will be supporting Governor John Bell Edwards, having been in a leadership position at a hospital when Medicaid was rolled out. I am very, very pleased with the courage that he has shown. And although we don't agree on every single issue, I do appreciate his predictability. I also appreciate that he's been able to work across the aisle and with our nation's president to get things like criminal justice reform accomplished. That being said, I do know both other gubernatorial candidates, and I will continue to be a collaborator and will work with anyone who is elected to lead our state.
I'm not actively supporting any of the gubernatorial candidates at this time. Unfortunately, the Libertarian Party does not have a gubernatorial candidate on the ballot this year. But that being said, I do think there is an argument to be made for the incumbent because I think it's likely we're going to end up with a very Republican legislature, and I do think in the interest of checks and balances, one party controlling the whole government is a little risky. Thank you.
Well, let me just say that my mother was a Democrat and my father was a Republican, so I learned to work with both sides. And I would be prepared to work with whoever's elected governor in the Senate to get things done. You can't do it by yourself. It takes a team effort, it takes cooperation and collaboration. So, sorry, Mom, I'm a Republican. Dad won that argument. But I always tried to please you, Mom, and make sure you were taken care of in your arguments, too. I would vote twice if I could, but I can't.
So the question is, where do you stand on sales tax collection consolidation into a uniform sales tax collector? And we start with Representative Foyle.
I support that. I think we might be the only state that doesn't do it that way. I actually authored and passed the bill that set forth the regulations for the internet sales tax collection, and it was modeled after, I want to say, a South Dakota law. But in any event, one of the big issues if we're going to collect internet sales tax, you need a consolidated sales tax collector. So I wholeheartedly support that.
My grandfather was a sharecropper who became an entrepreneur, and he was in the grocery store business. And those grocery stores went across state lines, and they went across counties and parishes. And I will tell you, a unified place for tax collection is better for everybody. It's certainly better for the small business owner. And when you get into complex systems of tax collection, such as the internet, there's no other real choice. We have to make it easier to do business in our state, not harder.
I agree that our state sales tax should be simplified. I have many clients in my law practice who have small businesses, and they struggle to navigate a lot of the regulatory and tax burdens they have. Anything that is going to make the government run more efficiently and spend less money doing it is good by me, even if it's in doing something like taxes that I'm not a huge fan of.
Well, of course, it should be simplified and centralized. That's the only business-like way to do it. However, the sheriffs are very powerful. The sheriffs get paid money for collecting those taxes locally. So I think to get this done, it's going to take some revenue sharing with the localities, so they're not being deprived of what they see as revenue they need. Many of these small parishes are not as prosperous as East Baton Rouge Parish. So you have to work with what you have to work with, but it definitely needs to be brought together and done in a business-like manner. Thank you.
I agree. To simplify the situation we have, it needs to be consolidated. It's the right thing to do. I don't understand why we're the only state that doesn't do it, but I can tell you, in order to make change like this, again, it takes courage, it takes bold leadership, because like was said, you've got a number of people that take a certain percentage out of it when they collect, and they don't want to eliminate the dollars that they're receiving in the local municipalities. But I still think that it's the right thing to do to make it simple for businesses, and so I'm very supportive of a consolidation of it.
So the question is, where do you stand on legalizing recreational marijuana in Louisiana? And we'll start with Dr. Thompson for this one.
Well, as you know, CBD oil has been passed and medical marijuana has been passed. And having lost a dear friend to cancer last week, I was pleased that in medicinal purposes, marijuana was available to alleviate that pain. But I also work very deeply in the recovery community, and legalizing marijuana is not another step that we need to take towards the crisis that we have in our community.
I think that marijuana should absolutely be legalized with no delays whatsoever. I was present at the legislature last time a bill to legalize it came up, and I testified in favor of that bill. I absolutely think that decriminalizing marijuana in every way, not just decriminalizing, legalizing it, it should be treated no differently than any other thing like alcohol. The sooner we do that, the better. That would be the number one most important first step in our criminal justice reform efforts, and in just making Louisiana a better place to live.
Well, in the Navy, we had a saying, would you want your helicopter mechanic to be on pot, smoking pot when he fixes your helicopter? So obviously, we should not completely legalize marijuana. I think it's far enough to use it for medicinal purposes, not to legalize it. But we need to look at how we enforce it so we're not sweeping up thousands of people who are simple users into the prison system and the justice system. Louisiana already has, the highest number of prisoners being held for relatively minor offenses. The taxpayers have to pay for all those prisoners, and we need to do it better and target the real criminals.
You know, obviously the question is asked because it will generate a number of dollars. But as I go around and visit and talk to people, I've got a very dear friend of mine who doesn't have one, doesn't have two, but has 3 chemically dependent children. And you ask him, and he says that marijuana will lead to the next step, the next step, and the next step. And also, if you talk to our district attorney, I think that he is concerned also that it would lead from one step to the next step. So I'm not for it.
I'm not for legalizing recreational marijuana at this time. We did pass, and I've supported wholeheartedly, the use of medical marijuana, as well as this last session, hemp and CBD oil for people in need of that kind of relief. So I think that's important. And I also think it's important to stress for people who are just using marijuana, they shouldn't be put in jail. That's not how we need to treat these folks. They need to, people have chemical issues in general, chemical dependency issues should be getting treatment and not put in jail.
Question is, what is your position on the legalization of industrial hemp production in the state, which I believe we just had a bill that dealt with that, that was passed. And we are starting on this end again.
Oh, my answer is obvious, that they should absolutely be able to do that. It's a plant. It shouldn't be subject to any special regulation. It grows out of the ground.
Yeah, I support that. We outlaw too many things without knowing everything about it.
We did have a bill in the last session, and I voted for it. I think it was the right thing to do. You have an awful lot of other things that hemp can be used for that are very popular and will help an awful lot of people, so I supported it, and I think we're already doing it.
I also support it. I was the co-author of that bill with Representative Scheck Snyder. We worked together on that bill. Part of the issue is we have to wait for the federal government to approve our plan. But now that we've passed it here in the state of Louisiana, it's going up to the Federal Department of Agriculture, and we expect that hemp production will be moving next year.
My major professor at LSU is Dr. Bill Richardson of the LSU Ag Center, and he is one of the leaders in thought leadership specifically on how hemp could be used. And if you ever have the opportunity to go to LSU and see La House, you can see all of the different things that you can use different materials for in agriculture. And hemp is a great example of that. You can make clothing, you can insulate your house, you can do amazing things. What I am in favor is making sure that the access to the growth of those plants is kept legal and it is kept protected. Anything that supports our farmers and supports the education of students at LSU and our Ag Center, I'm in favor of.
The question is, should the fetal heartbeat abortion ban bill have carried an exception for rape and incest? And I believe we're starting with Mr. Bell.
I support the Louisiana right to life position 100%. The only exception recognized by Louisiana right to life is the life of the mother, when otherwise the mother would die if not receiving an abortion. So I think there should not be an exception for rape and incest. The unborn child is not the rapist, so you should not punish the unborn child for the crime of the father. That's the way I look at it. So I'm 100% Louisiana right to life. My wife was in pro-life ministry for several years, so this is not just a political statement for us.
I had an amendment on the floor to do just that. I did not vote for it. The main reason I did not vote for it, because I have a very difficult time if a squirrel is in front of my car killing the squirrel, and you're gonna basically be killing an unborn. And I love kids. That's been all of my life, all of my profession, everything I've done with the camp businesses that I've had. And I just love kids, and I just have a very difficult time. And also, Representative Moore made a very passionate plea when she was on the floor talking about her as a 14-year-old. Her mother was impregnated with her, and they had a discussion of whether or not they were going to abort or whether they were going to, allow her to be born and raised by her grandmother. And it meant a lot to me, so I'm not for putting that on the bill.
I've always voted pro-life since I've been in the legislature. When that bill came up, there was an amendment for rape and incest. I did vote for that amendment. It did not get on the bill. So I did vote for the bill in its form that was presented to us for final passage, which had no exceptions but for the life of the mother.
I'm a practicing Catholic, and I've also worked in women's health care, and I've watched firsthand as people have faced gut-wrenching and difficult decisions. And what I believe about the bills passed this most recent legislative session is that those bills were about control, not about medicine or health care. And like my friend who likes to vote and not tell you who he votes for, I believe that health care decisions and medical decisions belong strictly in the doctor's office with a woman and her partner.
I think that the bill should absolutely have had those exceptions for rape and incest, but beyond that, I don't think it should have ever been passed. I don't think we need to be regulating that type of stuff in that way. I think, like Ms. Thompson said, it is a medical decision. Dr. Thompson, I'm sorry about that. As Dr. Thompson said, it is a medical decision between a woman and her doctor, and I don't think the state has any business telling them what to do. Thank you.
Now we're gonna do closings. Each candidate is gonna have a 1-minute closing, and since we started in that direction for openings, we'll start in this direction for closings with Dr. Thompson.
Once again, I'd like to thank the Press Club for having us here today. It is truly an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to share each of our views and to actually get to visit and hear the views of other candidates. I will tell you, and I don't have to point it out, but one of these things is not like the other. Standing up here today, I have spent 25 years in my career working for people, eliminating obstacles and eliminating barriers for success. And I will continue that fight and that trajectory in the legislature. While others are playing party politics and being beheld to this organization or that party, I'm going to show up every single day. I'm going to answer your phone calls. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to vote on every single bill. And if we can't balance a budget, I suggest we don't get paid. I'm tired of the party politics, and I'm going to look forward to being your state senator and holding others accountable.
Thank you for your time today. It's been a real pleasure being here. I have thoroughly enjoyed my service in the House for the last 12 years. I bring experience and effectiveness with me if I'm elected to the Senate. I've been able to work, like I said, with both parties very well with Governor Jindal and Governor Edwards to get legislation passed. One of the things that really drives me to continue service is the work I've done with the disability community. I ran into a mother the other day who told me how happy she was because her child was able to get some treatment for the autism the child had. And that's what keeps me going, and that motivates me to keep the fight. So I'm running not only to represent those folks, but all citizens to make their lives better here in Louisiana. Thank you.
In closing, I want to congratulate all of the candidates on stepping up. I mean, it's not easy to put your name out there and to campaign and to do the things that you have to do in order to be elected. But let me just say this. I'm not a career politician either. I was a tennis coach, as most of you know. But I got into this situation simply because I want to help people. I love helping people. The situation that I have that I think I bring to the table is I don't like the status quo. There's so many things that we can do to improve the quality of life of this state that is amazing. And I'm willing to step up, be courageous, be bold, and do the things that are necessary to improve our state, you, and everyone else, particularly young kids. So thank y'all very much for being here today. You had great questions, and thank you very much for moderating. And you did a marvelous job on that. You're right on target with those seconds.
I want to add my thanks to all the other things. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here today. It's an honor. However, we have to focus on the needs of our state. There's 750,000 people in the average congressional district. We've lost 2 districts since the year 2000. That means we've lost 1.5 million people. We have 1.5 million people missing in action that are gone from Louisiana. Now we're on track maybe to lose another congressional representative when the census is taken next year in 2020. That's 2.25 million people. That's an economic holocaust. The best thing we can do is get our state economy moving, make ourselves competitive, stop doing that which makes us fail over and over again.
I'd like to thank the Baton Rouge Press Club for the opportunity to be here today. This has been a great experience. I'd like to close by saying that politics is typically about promises. Promises that are made to people and to the state. Promises of things that we are going to do. Things we're going to do for you. And everyone has their own issue that they think is what the state should be doing. But I think we think about it in the wrong direction sometimes. I think we should start to consider as much, if not more, not what the state needs to be doing next, but what the state needs to stop doing first. It's not about what the government is going to do for you. It's what they need to stop doing to you. And so while we are still incarcerating more people than most places on earth, I think it's a little bit ridiculous that we're constantly talking about the good things we're going to do for the people of the state of Louisiana when we can't stop doing bad things to them. Thank you very much.